jamming out there in banjo land? Mike Hedding here, coming to you today with another free banjo lesson. We're going to continue the discussion about dominant 7th chords. So you might have seen chords like G7, C7, D7. Those are called dominant 7th chords. And they have a very bluesy sound that's really cool, used a lot in bluegrass. And the last lesson I did was on this up the neck kind of cool C7 lick that works out of the bar shape. And I realized after doing that lesson that there was a couple more shapes, dominant 7th chord shapes, that I hadn't broken down yet. So I wanted to do that in this lesson. We're going to talk about dominant 7th chords for the bar chord shape, the F shape, and the D shape. So those are the three common movable chords we're going to use in banjo. So for this lesson, I am going to assume that you know the F shape, D shape, and bar chord shape, and you've played those around the neck. So if you don't know those, go check out the other lesson I did, F, D, and bar shape exercises, and that'll help you learn those shapes, and then this lesson will make more sense. So let's start breaking down these dominant 7th chords. Okay, so real quick, before we jump into the shapes, let's just do a quick review of what a dominant 7th chord is, right? So you have a standard major chord, which is a 1, 3, 5, the 1, 3, 5 notes of the scale, or 1 flat 3, 5 is a minor chord, right? So a basic minor chord or a major chord is a 1, 3, 5. So any of those kind of more colorful chords like G7, G major 7, G6, G minor 7, G9, G sharp 11, whatever numbers are added onto those initial chords, basically what they're doing is they're taking that 1, 3, 5, kind of that foundation of the chord, and then they're adding these extra notes on top of it that give what a lot of people refer to as color, or what you could also call like a spice, right? So you kind of have your basic flavor with the major or minor chord, and then you're adding these additional spices on top, 7ths, 9ths, 11ths, to change the flavor and add more complexity to the chord. So that's the basis of what a dominant 7th chord is. And in practicality, the dominant 7 adds the flatted 7th note. So up here on the 5th fret of our 1st string is our root note, for example, in G. If we drop that down 1 fret, that'd be the major 7. And if you drop it down 2 frets, that'd be the G dominant 7. You hear how it has that bluesy quality. Okay? So that's the first shape. Let's work out of the F shape. And if we take our pinky off and we bar our 1st finger at the 3rd fret, that's a G7. I've broken this one down in several other lessons, so you might be familiar with this one. And what I always say about these chords is get used to viewing them in your mind as all 3 fingers or 4 fingers. Get used to visualizing them as 2-finger, and maybe even get used to visualizing it as 1 finger. It's all the same chord. But if I was playing vamping, for example, I might do the full shape. If I was playing a roll, I might do a partial shape. If I was playing more of a lead line, I might just play 1 finger, right? So I'm still in my mind thinking that all is the same chord. Okay, so that's the first F shape. That's a very common one. You can drop your pinky. Another one you can do out of this shape that's not quite as common, but you have a root note on the 1st string. You also have a root note on the 4th string, right? So you can also drop that note down, and you could either play like that, or a lot of times you might just do 2 fingers or 3 fingers, like I said. Get used to viewing that shape that way. So you have this one or this one, right? So you either have the 7th on the bottom in pitch or on the top, right? Okay, so that's the F shape. Those are the F shape dominant 7th chords you can do. If you go to your bar shape, let's go to our C, just because that'll be an easy one right here. The one I did in the last lesson is you add your pinky up on the 8th fret. That's a C7. But another one you can do is if you go back down and you play the bar chord with 3 fingers. I use my middle, ring, and pinky on the top 3 strings, so 5, 5, and 5. Now this the third string is your root note. So you can drop that down 1 fret would be C major 7. If you drop it down 2 frets, you have C dominant 7. So that's another nice one. You can hear that kind of movement. You can walk it down to the 6. That's very like a Beatles-esque way to play, like a little, you might have heard something like that. So that's the bar shape right there. So those are the two. There's basically kind of 2 versions for each shape. So the bar chord is this one, and then this one. Remember, get used to viewing it, like I said, with all the fingers down. You can even add your middle finger on the 5th fret of the low string. I don't do that too often, but you could. So you're here. So you could do the, you could do that. You could do just, the top 2. You could do the strings 3 and 1. So that's that shape, right? And we'll get into some exercises you can do in a second. I just want to break down these shapes first, right? So that's the bar shape, dominant 7th chords. Lastly, let's go up to our D shape, G chord, up at the 9th fret. So with this chord, our root note is on the 2nd string, right? So you could drop it down 1 fret to get a G major 7, or you can drop it down 2 frets. And a lot of times what I'll do here is I'll remove my ring finger. So you have this G here, and you're walking down the 2nd string note, or the 6, right? Like that. You can add that finger if you want, but it's a big stretch. The other one right here that you can do that I don't do quite as often is basically it's similar to the C7 you do down here. If you're up at at your D shaped G chord, you would take your index finger and put it on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. Your ring finger, put it on the 9th fret of the 1st string. And your middle finger on the 9th fret of the 4th string. So that's basically like your C. Now you're just up. And then you would add your pinky on the 10th fret, which is basically like your C7. So you have that. I don't do that one quite as often. Up the neck you could. But just so you know it, it's like that, right? So like that. So that's the D-shaped chord. So you have this one, and again, same thing. Get used to seeing it as different fingers. You can take different fingers off. It's still the same chord. Okay? So those are the 3 shapes, and there's 2 versions that I would kind of work on for each shape. So now let's talk about some basic exercises we can do, and then we'll get more advanced from there. Okay, so first thing I would do if you're just a beginner is I would start by staying on 1 chord. So in this case, let's stay on a G or a G7. So you can always play G7 licks if the song allows it, like a bluesier song. If the band is playing G, the soloist or the backup can still play a G7. So a common thing you might do is start by doing some rolls and just move through the shapes. So that's all on a G. So maybe I start with just like a forward verse roll. So I'm on my F shape. Now I slide up to my D shape, right? That's the next chord up. Still on a G. So now I'm on the D shape, G7. Now I slide up to my bar shape, G7, which would be 10, 12, 12, right? That's the C shape right here, right? So I could go from those 3 shapes. Forward verse roll. Stay on each as long as you want. You can hang out as long as you need to. Slide up. Slide up to, now you repeat the pattern, F shape. You can go up 1 more to the D shape way up here. You don't have another bar chord version because you run out of frets, but so you have this one. Down here, F shape, bar, D shape, F shape. All over a G chord. We're not changing chords. So we're just playing a G7. Maybe start with pinches. If you don't want to roll, you can start with pinches or vamping. Like I said, you can do a forward verse roll. You can do whatever roll you want. You You can do a forward roll. F shape. So what I recommend is one, saying them out loud. That's very helpful for me. You know, see what works for you, but that's what I would recommend is say them out loud. F shape, D shape, bar shape. The other thing I would do for this lesson is I wouldn't worry about what rolls and licks you're doing. I would just think about getting the positions down. A certain amount of this is just memorization. Yeah, you got to get the proper technique right to get all the notes to ring clear. And that will take a little bit of time, but generally for most people, it's just repetition that they need. They need more practice just going through the chords. And there's a certain amount of that you can't teach other than you just got to do it. You have to go through the shapes a whole bunch of times until you remember them and until you can remember them in an actual jam session, right? That's the next level, right? Where you might be able to do these slowly at your house, but can you find them in a song that you're actually trying to play? So that's obviously the next level of complexity. So what I would do, like I said, is start with just playing a G, and now we're playing through all those shapes, right? Once you feel like you've got that down, now add some other basic chords in that key. So if you're playing in the key of G, right, the common chords in that key would be G, C, and D. The 1, 4, and 5. So you might not always make all the chords sevenths, but if you want to practice it, you can. So we're going to do it now, a G7 to a C7, and then maybe to a D7, right? And then back to G, right? That might be like a very bluesy progression, right? So two things you could practice. Once you get going, you get down going through one chord with all the shapes. Now practice two things. Do the same shape, but go through all the chords. So now I'm going to do the F shape version of G7. Now I'm going to go up and do the F shape version of C7, which would be up at the 10th fret. So that's my F shape C7. Now I have F shape D7 at the 12th fret, right? So now I'm going through that one shape, but I'm playing a progression. And I could go all the way up to the 17th fret, right, to get my high G F shape, right? So now I'm doing that one shape, but I'm playing an actual chord progression. And you could go G, C, G, D, you could go G, D, C. Just mix those chords up in a different order. The order itself isn't particular. So that's one thing you can do. So if you feel like you've got that down and that's too easy, next thing I want you to do is find another shape of the next chord. So now we're going to start at a G7 here, right? And now I might grab my C7 right there. So now I've got my bar shape C here, and now I'm going to a C7 here, right? So I'm going from this G7 to this D7, or C7 bar shape. Next chord is D7. If I want to find a different shape, I could do my D here. That would be the D shape D7 chord, right? Or I could go up and go here. Or I could go, this would be the same shape as the C7, but I could go here to my D7, right? So that's my bar shape, D, make it a 7. So I'd have here, C7, either D7 here, or here. And then I'd have G7 here, C7, right? You know, D7. So you can see how you can just move through those shapes. Now I've got G7 here, C7, D7, you know, G7, C7, D7. See, I'm just working those shapes over and over again, and that's why I keep calling them out, because it's just repetition. And that's when I'm practicing them. You always have 3 versions of each chord, the F shape, D shape, and bar chord. So you can stay on one shape the whole time, like this, G7, C7, D7, right? So that's the bar shape. You could do G7 here, C7 here, D7 here. That's the D shape, right? So see how I'm cycling through all those? If you want to keep it simple, stay on the same shape. The downside to staying on the same shape is, because that's obviously a immediate question is, well, why would I ever switch shapes? Why don't I just stay on the F shape the whole time? The reason why you might not do that, right, is because if you stay on the same shape, you by nature of the instrument, you end up having to do a lot more movement, right? So if the song gets super fast, doing those big jumps with your left hand become harder, right? Because if I add other shapes, now I have a G7 here, I've got my C7 right here, I don't even have to move really, and then I've got D7 here or here, you know, I can now move a lot closer to my next chord because I'm using other shapes. So that's why long term you want to use more than one chord shape, right? Because otherwise you're just going to be doing this a lot, and it's going to be a lot harder to play smooth when you're jumping around that much, okay? So that's taking a basic progression, the 1, 4, 5. Obviously you can do this in any key, so you can move it up to A7, D7, E7, A7, right? And you can always play the major chords too, so you know you have A here, D7, E7, A, or A7, A bar chord here, or A7 here, right? Or A7 here with the high A, or A here, A7, or here, right? Whoops, that was a little tricky, but right there, right? So that's the C7 shape, now done up at an A7, right? So you always have, remember these, what's nice about these movable chords is once you get them down, you can move them wherever you want. So do the 1, 4, 5 maybe in a couple keys you're playing. And then lastly, if you really want to test yourself, try going through either the circle of fourths or the circle of fifths, depending on which way you look at the circle. So you're either going to go counterclockwise if you want to do the circle of fourths, or you're going to go clockwise if you want to do the circle of fifths. So this is a great way to test your brain and test your knowledge. So what we're going to do is, let's start at our G. So we're going to start with our G7. And then what we're going to do is we're going to try and find the next closest chord that's a fourth. So right here, so you're right here with your G. The fourth of G is C, right? So we're going to go to the C7 here. Now what's the fourth of C? The fourth of C is C, D, E, F, right? So we're here at C7, whereas our F7 would be the D shape F7 chord right here, right? So that's F, now you have F7. What's the fourth of F? B flat, right? So now you have your F shape B flat here. Now you have, so you have B flat 7, and then the fourth of that is E flat, so E flat bar chord there, 7. Fourth of that is A flat, so A flat here, A flat 7. The fourth of that is D flat, so right here, 7. And then you have G flat, right? So it's just a pattern once you get it down. But what I like about this is you're really testing your knowledge of those fourths, right? So you're here, G flat. So the fourth of that is B, right? And then the fourth of that is E. And then the fourth of that is A. And then the fourth of that is D. And then the fourth of that is G. And you're back, right? So obviously, you're not necessarily going to play that as a real chord progression, right? But you can see how well that tests your knowledge. You have to go through it slowly. And as you can see, I was saying them out loud to reinforce that I was confident. And you're also working on your ear training to hear how those fourths sound, right? And you could do the opposite, right, with fifths, right? So you have G7. Now the fifth of that is D7. Fifth of that is A, A7, E. So you can go through that same process, right? B, so you're here. And then F sharp. So you can see you could go circle of fifths, doing the fifth of all the notes. You can go backwards, do the circle of fourths. You're really just memorizing up and down those seventh chords. You can also do it with the major chords as well and minor chords too. So that's the last level of complexity. Obviously, don't start with that if you're a beginner, but that's something you can practice. You can see how well it just really tests your knowledge, test your retention. A big struggle with these chords I found for myself personally and for students, it's not that they don't know the chords, it's how quickly can they recall it. And can you and myself, can you recall it kind of when the pressure's on? When someone says, hey, quick, what's D7? You have to be able to find it quickly, right? So that's why going through these chords a few times and just saying them out loud, and then put the banjo down. You don't have to do a massive practice session. What I would recommend, pick the banjo up a couple times a day, go through the seventh chords of G, C, and D, and then put it back down. It's all about keeping it fresh in the front of your mind. Imagine you were trying to remember someone's name. You just keep repeating the name over and over in your head. The more you can keep it in the front of your mind, it's just going to help you build that recall, that retention ability. So when you get to a jam session and there's a lot of stuff going on, you can actually remember what G7 is. And like I said, a certain amount is just, you got to log the hours going up and down. So give it some practice. Digest it slowly, and I know you can get it with some practice. All right, good luck, and keep picking.